I recently came across this concept that has kind of changed the way that I'm viewing investing and investment opportunities. Now, this concept is not particularly new or revolutionary, but I don't think many people would have actually joined the dots on this one and cemented it in their brain, and so I wanted to share. The concept in question is looking at these companies and sectors that have been experiencing a decline in their cost curves, as it's these that have a higher chance of becoming more effective and cost efficient over time, which then can mean they become more profitable, which of course can present an opportunity to an investor. Let me explain more about them, and then we're actually going to look at some sectors and some companies in particular that I think are primed to do pretty well based on this concept. Also remember, this is not financial advice at all. So these cost curves, also called cost declining curves, look a little bit like this. I mean, this is quite a simplified version, but it gives you an idea. But basically, it's showing you the relationship between the production or deployment of a product or service and its cost over time. So what you can see is that as production or deployment increases, which is shown on the x-axis here, quantity going up, the cost per unit actually falls. So the cost per unit decreases. And that's just what a cost declining curve is showing you. Production is scaling, cost is falling. A guy named Bruce Henderson actually came up with this concept when he noticed that the cost of producing things tended to decline by a predictable amount. For example, if the cost of the production of a product was seen to decline by 20% for every cumulative doubling of production, then if the production was then doubled again, the cost would be seen to fall by an additional 20%. Computers are a really good example of how this actually works. In the early days of computing, computers were really expensive and quite difficult to produce, and they weren't even that great compared to what they are today. However, as technology improved and production increased, what we saw is that the cost of producing these computers actually started to fall. In the 70s, the cost of producing just one personal computer was several $1,000s. But then as production increased, the cost per unit started coming down. In the 80s, the cost fell to a few $100s. And then by the 90s, it had fallen even more to below $100. The decline in the cost of actually producing these computers was caused by several different factors. You had improvements in the manufacturing process, you had increased competition, and you had economies of scale. They were all playing into this cost decline. And what happens is that as the production increases, manufacturers are able to spread their cost over more units, which then means that, of course, the individual cost per unit is lower. And also just naturally, as manufacturing goes on, mistakes are made, then you learn from those mistakes, which of course then reduces costs in the future. So all these things come into play. But as a result of the cost coming down, computers were more accessible to the everyday person, which then meant that computers were being adopted more in homes and technology was improving, which then leads to even further innovation and improvements in technology, again bringing the price back down even more. So it's a bit of a cycle, really. The people that actually saw this adoption and this cost curve decline happening when it was happening and chose to invest got really rewarded. For example, the early investors into Microsoft. Now, cost declining curves are important because they allow an investor to foresee and to spot trends. Products and services that are coming down in cost as the demand is going up are more likely to be primed to do well, which then means there may be an investment opportunity at play. So I'm just going to whiz through some steps that investors could use to actually spot these companies, these sectors that may be benefiting from this. And then we're going to dive into what sectors are currently benefiting and for the future, and what companies, which is going to be really interesting, so stick around for that. So firstly, you need to identify which industries are experiencing cost curve declines. I'll point some out to you in a minute, but you can literally just Google this. Then you need to take this one step further and actually study the historical cost declines and see how these industries have been declining their costs. You want to find those companies in particular that fall within these industries that are able to reduce their costs, which you'll see on the graphs and the ones that you find in your previous research. But you also want to look for just good quality companies and those that have been able to increase their profit margins along with this reduction of cost. because it's all well and good them being able to produce something for cheaper, but if their profit margins are staying the same or even declining, then they're maybe not the best investment opportunity. The next one is to consider the impact of economies of scale. Declining cost curves are often driven by economies of scale, where the large companies are able to manufacture and produce products or services much more efficient than those smaller companies. So look for those companies that have a significant scale advantage, and the ones that are going to be able to really run with this cost production and scale quickly and well. So which sectors have actually been seeing cost declines? The first one is renewable energy. Like solar, like wind, and you can see from the cost decline curves that these are becoming cost competitive with the traditional fossil fuels. As costs continue to decrease in this area, the investment opportunity increases. You could argue that the emerging markets is more primed for this just because the need for energy infrastructure is a lot higher. One company that comes to mind here is actually Tesla. Now, I know we all know Tesla as an electric vehicle company, but actually they are a leading player in the renewable energy field. They have solar panels and energy storage products. Another company is First Solar. This company produces a lot of solar panels that are then used for the large scale projects. The next area is electric vehicles. Now, you'd have to be living under a rock not to already have noticed the adoption of electric vehicles. But it's the cost of batteries that I want to point out here. The cost of batteries is declining, and batteries are one of the main cost components when producing an electric vehicle. So of course, if that cost goes down, the overall cost of production of one of these vehicles also falls. This has already been declining for many years, and it's continuing to do so. The raw material that is used in these battery packs that are put into the EVs is lithium, so they're lithium ion batteries. And what we can see by this graph here is that since 2010, the price of these battery packs have declined by 90%. That is insane in such a short space of time. And this curve looks really nice here. You can see that it's gradually just falling and falling and falling. And for some reason, this points out that the drop is starting to slow. I think that's a given. It can't just go to zero. But the point is, if you look at the cost, this is 2020. So we got data up to 2021 here. If you compare the cost of 2021 compared to 2010, that is an insane price difference. And of course, that then makes the EVs cheaper to produce, which increases profit margins and makes it cheaper for the consumer, so they're more likely to buy them. And then there's also this graph here, which is a similar thing. So lithium ion battery price output. So this is more of a prediction. So you can see that the little blue triangles are the price reductions that have happened for lithium ion battery packs. And again, you see a similar thing that we just saw. In 2010, it was 1,200, and it's gradually fallen. And they're predicting that it's just going to keep falling. Yeah, the fall will be shorter. The fall will be less so, but even so, if it can get to this point here where it's 62 compared to 1,200, that is an insane difference. And what companies are going to benefit from this? Well, the ones that need lithium ion. And the lithium ion batteries actually make up 30 to 40% of the cost of an entire EV. So nearly half of the price to produce one of these EVs is coming from the price of the lithium ion battery. So if that falls, the entire price of the vehicle falls. What does that mean? Higher profit margins, more adoption. As to which companies are primed here, personally, I think it's going to be Tesla. Tesla are the ones already doing this at scale. They're producing these electric vehicles at scale. They're opening more manufacturing plants. Personally, I just think it's going to be Tesla. I think that there's going to be other companies doing this as well. You know, you've got GM, you've got Toyota, all these other companies. But I think Tesla's kind of like a decade almost ahead of these other companies in terms of scale, in terms of getting the vehicles delivered to the customers, all of this stuff, the technology. There are other companies, but I think Tesla is going to be one that does well here. Again, I should just say this is all opinion. This is not financial advice. Digital technology and storage is another area where the costs have been declining for many decades and are continuing to do so, which then leads to the creation and adoption of new technologies in the future. And I think as this continues to happen, we'll see even more investment opportunities in areas such as the cloud and in AI, which we're already actually seeing starting to happen. Think ChatGPT, which has definitely been doing its rounds recently on social media. So some companies that come to mind when thinking about the artificial intelligence side of it in particular are AMD, Intel, and Nvidia. But then when you think about the cloud storage side of it, you've got other companies, you've got Amazon Web Services, you've got Microsoft Azure, you've got Google Cloud, Google Cloud, and you've also got Snowflake and Palantir as well here. And the last area that I wanted to point out to you today is quite an exciting one, in my opinion, and that is healthcare, specifically genomics and personalized medicine. I really think this area could be the next big thing, the future. Again, not financial advice, please don't confuse it with this. But yeah, this is really exciting. So let me explain this one. The price of sequencing a human genome has been falling dramatically. The cost to sequence a human genome, one human genome, was $1 billion. $1 billion. So clearly this was not affordable to do for research purposes, for personal purposes, for industry purposes. It was very, very expensive because the technology just wasn't there to support it. As the technology got better, as the manufacturing got better, economies of scale, all of this stuff that I've been speaking about, they were going up, so the cost was coming down. Now, this report's 2020, but you can see that the cost per sequencing of human genome, $1,000. So 1 billion to 1,000. That is insane. And this dramatic reduction in the cost of genomics has just made it a more accessible area to study, which then can lead on to better drugs and new technologies and personalized medicine and all of this stuff. So it's a really exciting area. One area where genomics is having a particularly significant impact is precision and personalized medicine. By analyzing a patient's genetic makeup, you can actually tailor the treatment directly to them. And this can improve the patient's outcome and the likelihood of success and reduce costs. Because by tailoring it specifically to them and knowing their genetic makeup, you're going to have less drug reactions. And also you're going to spend less time trying things that just, you can already foresee that aren't going to work by actually knowing their DNA makeup. And this leads to it's better for the patients and it's cheaper for the people doing it. And this also expands to gene editing technology such as CRISPR. Now, for all of you non-science nerds out there, CRISPR is a way that you can change particular genes within a sequence. So you can go in and you can edit the gene causing a genetic disease or the gene increasing your likelihood of getting cancer, stuff like that. So it's going to be completely revolutionary in terms of medicine. There are loads of ethical issues with this as well, so I don't know how quick the adoption will be in everyday medicine, but I think we'll get there eventually. I can't really think of just one single company in the genomic space, but I can think of ARC Invest, run by Cathie Wood. They have an ETF specifically looking at the genomic space. I think it's called ARCG, but let me pull it up and we can actually take a look at what holdings are in this quickly. Okay, so it's called ARCG. ARC's Genomic Revolution ETF, and you can see just some things about it here, but I'm not really here to look at that. I just want to look at the holdings. So what companies have they selected to go inside their genomic ETF? Because this might give you an idea of what sort of ones to look at. So by weight, the largest is Exact Science, and then we've got Teladoc Health, which I have heard of before, but I don't really know much about. Pacific Biosciences of Caliph, never heard of. And I'm just going to scroll and just let you have a look. Look, CRISPR Therapeutics. So what I've just been speaking about, I guess this is a whole company looking at that technology, the gene editing technology. And you've got many here. I've actually heard of this bottom one as well from somewhere. Can't remember where. But this is a good place to start. Perhaps look at what companies are in that. Do your own research. See if you actually think this genomic space is going to be a thing. Because this may be quite an early point to get into that if you do want to. I hope this video has just given you an idea of cost decline curves and how you can utilize them as an investor. Like I said, it's kind of changed the way that I'm thinking about investing and investing for the future now, because although I do want the stable, boring companies as well, I also want a portion of my portfolio to be more aimed at growth. And I think it's these companies and these sectors that are actually going to see the highest growth in the next few years. If there are any that I missed where you can think that the cost of production is coming down in a particular area, let me know in the comments. If you want to chat to me about this or anything else, feel free to check out the Patreon and you get Discord access where we have a community of like-minded people chatting about investing, personal finance, everything like that every single day. So check that out. And yeah, I'll leave it here. Thank you so much for watching the video and supporting the channel, and I'll be back soon with another video.